So I would suggest we will wait like 2-3 minutes to allow others to join.
Perfect, no problem, no rush.
Tak ještě jednou dobrý den, omlouvám se všem kolegům za to, že museli tady poslouchat naší konverzaci o počasí. Myslím si, že jsme neřekli nic špatného, tak snad jsme vás aspoň trošičku zabavili. Já bych vás rád všechny přivítal na dnešním semináři, který se bude týkat nástroje Cite, což je nástroj, který nám pomáhá sledovat to, jak jsou vědecké publikace navzájem citovány, jak se navzájem sledují. Dává nám to jak ten kvalitativní, ale tak i ten kvantitativní pohled. Moje jméno je Jakub Petřík, jsem výkonným ředitelem společnosti Albertina ICOME Praha. Jenom krátce, než se pustíme přímo do sajtu, tak bych vám rád představil naši společnost, kterou předpokládám, že bude většina z vás znát, protože už 31 let vám dodáváme elektronické informační zdroje, a to jak prostřednictvím Albertina ICOME Praha v České republice, tak prostřednictvím Albertina ICOME Bratislava na Slovensku. Jak jsem říkal, 31 let už se snažíme pro vás dělat to nejlepší, co umíme. Pracujeme s většinou významných vydavatelů, které najdete v té informační oblasti. Zároveň jsme partnerem v České republice Czech Libu a na Slovensku CVTI. Pokud budete si o nás chtít zjistit něco víc, tak na stránkách AIP.cz nebo AIB.sk se dozvíte novinky, zajímavosti, všechny informace, které tam pro vás připravujeme. Zároveň se tam můžete přihlásit k odběru našich novinek. Je to takový nepravidelný občasník, kde se snažíme vyzdvihnout to nejdůležitější z oblasti elektronických informačních zdrojů. Pokud budete mít nějaké dotazy přímo k site, tak buď to kontaktujte za naší pražskou kancelář kolegy Kareny, buď to pana Vladimíra Karena nebo Vojtěcha Karena. Na Slovensku to samé, buď to Miriam nebo kolegu Ladislava. Abych nezdržoval, tak se posuneme dál. Jak již bylo zmíněno na začátku v té naší neformální konverzaci, tento seminář bude nahráván, takže potom se budete moct zpětně podívat na záznam. A já bych předal slovo panu doktoru Joshi Nicholsonovi, který je zakladatelem sajtu a zároveň výkonným ředitelem a který vám ukáže vše, jak je a provede vás celým tím systémem. Josh, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that. Take over.
Ještě si dovolím jenom krátkou poznámku. Pokud budete mít nějaké dotazy, napište nám je do chatu. V případě, že budete chtít, nebudete si úplně jistí s anglickou formulací, napište česky, slovensky, my to pro Joše přeložíme. So, and it's really yours now.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, of which I only understood the hello part. And so thanks everyone also for joining. I know we're all drowning in Zoom meetings for the last couple of years, so I really appreciate your time, especially with everything going on in the world as well. I think we have built something really interesting though. So hopefully, this encourages a lot of questions and feedback. So please do, use the Q&A to ask any questions you have, as well as to share, your opinions and thoughts on this. And so today I'm going to talk about what we've built at Cite. But before getting into that, I'd like to kind of take a step back and remind us that, what we do as librarians, as researchers, as publishers, as, tool builders in this space really enables some amazing things. And so to me, research is amazing. It's given us this ability to have these virtual conferences around the world with a click of a button, life-saving vaccines to get back to, normal life, if you will. The powerful computers in our purses or our pockets, all these things have ultimately been informed by research. And I think we can forget that, when we're dealing with the business aspects of it, the bureaucracy, publishing, the slow things. And so it's a nice reminder. With that said, there are things that we can improve. And so there's challenges in research. There's a lot of research. And so if you look at how many papers are being published, just in the biomedical space alone, there's 2 papers coming out per minute. And so there will be, 120 new papers by the end of this talk. And that's likely an underestimate, really, because this is only, looking at biomedical literature and is now a few years kind of out of date since this estimate was produced. In addition to this, there's been growing concerns around reproducibility. And so there was large initiatives from pharma, nonprofit initiatives that have looked at various different disciplines and tried to reproduce major claims from them. And what these different organizations and companies have found is that a lot of times findings cannot be reproduced. And so how do we know what to trust? How do we keep up with this massive amount of information? And so that's really, what we've built Cite for, is to make research more reliable, to make it more understandable, and ultimately to introduce the next generation of citations. Because I think how we use citations, is only touching the tip of the iceberg. And there's a lot of really rich information that can help with these things. And so the way that I like to show Cite, and maybe I should acknowledge before moving on, Cite has been funded in a large part by grants here in the US. And so we're happy to receive a major grant from the NIH, as well as one from the NSF. So the way that I like to start and kind of show Cite is to show the world as it exists without Cite, and then to show it through the lens of Cite. And so I have a PhD in cell biology. I finished this about 7 years ago. This is the main study coming out of that. I was looking at chromosome segregation defects in human cells, cancer cells, and non-cancer cells. My work was published in eLife. I did my PhD at Virginia Tech. We collaborated with the hospital in Portugal, as well as the lab at the NIH. The work has been cited 61 times and then viewed 11,000 plus times. And so I point these different things out because this is generally what we look at when we come upon a research paper. Where was it published? Do I know this journal? Do I trust it? Does it have a strong reputation? Similar types of questions around the authors and their affiliations. And then some metrics, and generally I would say, when we look at the metrics, we probably just glance at it often, right? A high number is good, a low number is not so good. I can tell it's made an impact, it's not, it's a new study, things like this. If, however, you click through to the citation number, you'll come across Scopus or Crossref or Web of Science. And what you'll see is a traditional citation index, so a list of the citing articles that is citing my work. And so in this case, there's 62. Maybe you'll glance at the titles and find one that looks interesting and open 1 or 2. But in general, you're not going to open 62 documents when you come to my study. That is a massive amount of work. It would take hours to do, and it's totally impractical. And I think that is a really big missed opportunity, because behind these 62 documents are years of work, millions of dollars. Maybe some of them provide very useful interpretation of my study, so you can better understand it. Maybe some of them provide very valuable criticism. Some have looked at the same claim as mine, maybe in the same system or in a different system, and maybe some support it or contrast it. And so you don't know, and you're missing out on all this rich information because it's locked behind kind of this static number, or that you just glance at and say, hi is good. And so that's what we want to change at Cite, is to make this information digestible so you can better understand an article, a researcher, a research institution, really an idea, and better utilize the literature. And so if you come back to eLife, we have a browser extension for Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and Microsoft Edge. I think this is the best way to get started for Cite. And it's really like putting on glasses, right? You can continue to do however you do your workflow. This will enhance it. And so it's also free to get. It will show you our information wherever you're reading a scientific article online. And so eLife, PubMed, Google Scholar, it even shows up next to reference sections. And what it shows you is a citation number. And as you can see, we have very robust coverage at this point. So even more than what eLife is showing or what Scopus shows, followed by a breakdown of citation statements. So supporting, mentioning, and contrasting. If you click this, it brings you over to Cite. And what you can see is, very much like the traditional citation index and like the version of record, we have some typical metadata. So title, authors, abstract. And then if you scroll down, you'll see what we call a smart citation. And so this citation, similar to Scopus, we show the title, we show the authors, we show the journal where that comes from. But very differently, we show the citation context. So you can directly see how an article has been used, not just how many times has it been cited. And so in this case, you're able to see, what does this paper say from Vigano et al. It says, in agreement with previous work, and then cites Nicholson et al. 2015, the trisomic clones showed similar aberrations, albeit to a lesser extent, supplemental figure S2B. And so really in a matter of a click, you're able to see that this paper has been supported by a subsequent study, and then there's no shared author, so it's not a self-cite. And to me, that's very powerful because it opens up, these networks and these conversations that papers are having, so you can see this information. We show 3 sentences. We also show where we extracted this text from. And so this excerpt of text comes from the results section. And you can see that it's been classified as supporting because it indicates that it has supporting evidence. And so those are the key things, is where was this paper cited? Was it cited in the introduction? Was it cited in the results section? How many times was it cited? So in some cases, it can be cited in multiple sections of the paper. And I think, there can be a very big difference between a citation in the introduction made in passing to one that, has been cited and discussed 5 times. And so looking at, engaged versus passive citations, where they come from. And so you're able to filter by, method sections to see, okay, I want to see papers that discussed or cited this work in the method section. I want to look at the results or the discussion section because I want to understand this. This is one thing that we see a lot of students using Cite for. And so students will be asked to write an essay on a specific topic or a specific paper. They can now look at what have experts said about this, how have they interpreted it, what are the key findings of this. And so this is, a very powerful way of looking at different ways the work has been cited. And there's no, sophisticated machine learning. It's really just taking the section of the paper. We also have introduced a citation type. And so this was really addressed at trying to identify, has this study been tested? Has it been supported or contrasted? Is it reproducible? So the way that we've developed these citation types was, as experts, to look at roughly 40,000 citation statements like this, read them and annotate them and say, okay, these authors are indicating that they're providing supporting evidence, they're providing contrasting evidence, or they're just mentioning it. That data that we've annotated has gone into feeding this deep learning model that will classify these things at scale. And that's necessary because we're now talking about, 1 billion citation statements from nearly 30 million articles. And so that's just too much for humans to do. With that said, it's very difficult to do this, and it's not always going to be perfect. And so we show the context. I think that's key. So it's not just trust us as a supporting, you can actually read it yourself. We then show the confidence that the model has. And so if we get it wrong, we allow users to flag these sites and say, this doesn't actually look like it's supporting, it looks like it's mentioning. And that's very useful because 9 times out of 10, when you introduce Cite to a researcher, they search themselves. And it's important to allow this feedback. So, we're not saying this is a contrasting citation or not. In addition to filtering where the citations come from, you can also search these citation statements. So say you're interested in chromosome segregation, but you're working with yeast and you want to see if anyone's discussed yeast. You can search that here and it will match the citation or any metadata here. And this allows you to kind of discover related work. And so in this case, it says, moreover, since aneuploidy has been shown to cause genetic and chromosomal instability in both yeast and mammalian cells. And you can see the blue citation is the target citation, so the citation to my work. But if you hover over these co-citations, you can find related studies. And so these are studies that found the same thing that I found in human cells, but they found them in yeast. And so this is a good way to find related work as well, and to really kind of, again, look at this conversation that papers are having, and then navigate or kind of surf this citation web, if you will. Continuing down, you can filter by year, and so you can see recent citations and what they're saying. You can organize it by article type, so maybe you want to see if it's a preprint, if you want to see if it's been used in a practice guideline, etc. We also allow you to filter by self-citations, independent citations. You can see where these citations are coming from, so which journals. So if you are finding a paper that's really related to your work, you can say, okay, maybe one of these journals would be a great place for submission. You can also see researchers citing this. You can download this, you can add this to a dashboard, and I'll show you dashboards in a minute. And you can also visualize a report. So here is a citation visualization. In the center is my article, and you can see there's arrows coming into it and arrows going out of it. So again, continuing, there's this theme of this conversation happening amongst papers. You can see which papers are supporting my work, and then which papers I support or I contrast. And so you can click on the edge and see what does Vigano say about Nicholson et al. Over here. And so it really allows you to look at how a study has been cited. The size of the node will relate to how many citations the article's received. And so this is the most highly cited article. By default, we're only showing supporting and contrasting, but you can expand this to see all citations. Obviously, this becomes a bit more noisy, but you can choose to work with different layouts and say, I want to see citations that came before Nicholson et al. So the ones I've built my study on. So these are all arrows coming from mine. And then studies that cite mine. And so this is, again, a good way to kind of look at the citation network and see which papers are really having a big influence on mine, or which papers are important in this area. One thing you can also do from this is that you can build upon it. So say you want to see Silkworth and my study, and not just see how they relate, but see how other studies relate to Silkworth. And so if you click the node, there will be a plus sign, and what you can do is expand that, and it will add on to that paper. And so you can start to build out this graph and look at multiple papers and see how do they relate to each other. Are there key papers that are cited by multiple papers or a couple papers, and really kind of explore this network. And so this is showing the same information that I just showed on the site report, but is showing it in a visual representation, which can be helpful for a lot of different learners. Can also be helpful for making figures for presentations or publications as well. Beyond seeing how a work has been cited, you can also see how it references others. And so you can see that I referenced this paper 10 times. And so this was a big influence on my paper that I used a lot, and I used some methods from it. If you want to see that, you can then click this and see exactly how I referenced it. And so we can't show all of this because we'd be reproducing too much of the paper, and that's important not to do. And so how do we do this, right? How do we get out the citation context so that we can show this? It seems like a simple idea, and it really kind of is, but behind that is a lot of technical challenges go into this. And so the first step is that we need access to the content, right? So we need to work with publishers, and we share many of the same partners as Albertina. We work directly with publishers as well as open access sources to gain access to the full text of articles. And so to date, we've signed over 20 different publishing agreements or indexing agreements with publishers around the world. Not all of them are listed here, so that we can gain access to content. We have analyzed nearly 1 billion citation statements, as the webinar is entitled, and hopefully we'll cross this soon, from 28 million full text articles. most of these articles still come in PDF. And so PDF, as many of you are likely aware, and I'll just show you a visual representation of what this looks like. So most articles still come in PDF. PDF produces a lot of challenges for us. So there are 2-column, there's single column, there's superscript, there's parentheticals. There's a lot of different formats and styles of PDF. Similarly, there's a lot of different citation styles. There's thousands of them, in fact. And so we need to be able to identify the in-text citation, take that information, match that to the reference section, take that string of information, which again can be varying. Sometimes it'll have a DOI, sometimes it'll have all authors, sometimes it'll have 2 authors. Take that information and then match that against metadata from Crossref or DataCite. And so there's a lot of machine learning that goes into just being able to build kind of the citation graph from scratch and extract it out. And as you can see, it's quite good. So it's got most of them, but it's not perfect, right? And so in this case, it missed one as well. And if you go back and are dealing with, PDFs that are really pictures and 100 years old, it can be even more challenging. And so, there are some limitations there, but it is quite amazing, I would say. Once we have that information out, I already mentioned this, we then have this deep learning model that's been trained on roughly 40,000 annotated citation statements to classify that citation statement as does it provide supporting or contrasting evidence. This information, if you're interested in detail, if you go to our resources section, we've recently published a paper that describes all of this in a lot more detail. It'll give examples. It'll talk about the precision, the recall score. You can also see that it's been cited itself. And so coming back to cite, beyond just showing, how an article has been cited, we also show how researchers have been cited. And so all these names are linked. Also, all the affiliations are linked. And so what you can do is click on a researcher's name and then look at their publication record. And so here is Aaron Mattingly, who was an undergrad in our lab and then went to do a PhD at UCSF. You can see his publication record, and you can see here's this article. You can organize by most citations, least citations, newest ones, and get a better understanding of their work, right? What is their most impactful study, their most seminal study, their most reproduced study, and then not only how have they been cited, but also how do they cite others, right? Are they highly critical? Are they not contrasting anyone? Or are they just supporting people? And so again, this is a new way of looking at what we've long looked at, but with more rich citation. You can click on affiliations and look at the citation record for different universities, different companies, or different funders in aggregate. And so if you look at Virginia Tech, you can see that there's 92,000 articles that we identify from Virginia Tech. Here is the breakdown of citations types. So most of these are mentioning, then supporting, and then contrasting. And so in globally, this is true. So about 94% are mentioning, about 5% are supporting, and contrasting are less than 1%. And so they're quite rare. And it's really important to emphasize that supporting and contrasting is not just positive or negative sentiment. It's really looking at the rhetorical function. Is there supporting evidence? Is there contrasting evidence? We also identify if there's any editorial notices, so retractions, withdrawals, corrections, errata, etc. We've done some more work here, and we're actually writing a paper on this to enhance the information beyond what is available from PubMed Central or from Crossref. And so we've done some title detection matching and actually have a very robust coverage of retractions at this point. We've also introduced what we call the Cite Index. The Cite Index is just helpful to look at different groups of publications, whether it's a university or a journal. And it's really quite simple. It's just a ratio showing the number of supporting sites over supporting plus contrasting sites. And so 0.9 means that there's a lot of supporting sites and not so many contrasting, as you can see. You can look at this in different windows. You can look at and see how this changes over time. You can also look at it graphically, and you can see that there's not much here, or not much changes, I should say. You can see who has published the most in this university. So we show the top 1,000 authors just by count. And so there's 444 papers from this researcher, and you can scroll down. And again, you can click on any of these names and look at their publication record. And so this is a great way to look at your university, see who is publishing there, who's the most supported researcher, etc. If you continue down, you'll see the table of articles from this university, and you can look at this in different ways. So here is the most supported paper which has some issues with the author name. But you can also look at and say, I want to see the most supported paper where there's no contrasting sites. And so you can choose 0 contrasting and then at least 1 supporting. And you'll see this paper has 49 supporting citations, which is talking about this finding on the wingtip vortex. And so again, this is a powerful way of looking at a group of articles, not just an individual. You can download this as a CSV. You can also set an alert. And I should note that you can set an alert on dashboards, on researcher profiles, on individual articles as well, so that you not only understand this information, but you stay up to date with it. And so papers are constantly changing. There's constantly being discussions. And so that's really important to keep up with that as well. And so what I've shown, has all kind of been obvious. Here's how an article's been cited. Here's how a person's been cited. Here's how a affiliation's been cited. You can go to product and you can look at, any journal and see this information as well. You can filter by this. You can see, which ones have the most citations, which have the highest site index. You can see PNAS here. And again, this is, a powerful way of looking at these things. Say, however, you're interested in a specific topic that is not this predefined journal or paper. So we have 2 different searches. One is searching papers, the other is searching citation statements. What you can do is search for topics that you're interested in and identify what is the most supported, what is the highly cited work in this area. So if you search chromosome missegregation, in the paper search, we're matching based on title as well as abstract. You can choose what you care about. So maybe you want to just see papers where there's at least 5 supporting citations. This narrows this down. You can also filter to see contrasting citations or just has any citation. From this, you can see who is publishing in this area. So Dawn Cleveland, a National Academy member, has 9 papers matching chromosome missegregation where there's at least 5 supporting citations. Same with David Pellman having 5. You can select these researchers, go to their profile, or you can select their name and then see their co-authors, and it will update all of this. And so this is a really powerful way saying, here's a specific topic that I'm working on, my dissertation, my homework, if you're a large pharma company, this drug or disease that I might care about. And what you can do from that is, set the criteria that you care about. You can save a search and again, receive a new email when there's new citations to this work that you might care about or new publications matching this. So it's a good way to look at an aggregate group of publications and then stay on top of it. Additionally, you can also create a dashboard that will look identical to the one that I just showed you, but now is custom and built on, sorry, there's a dog here, is built on this article of interest. So here is chromosome segregation. Here's a total number of articles, the breakdown of these, and then what this looks like over time. Again, the researchers there, this can be shared with collaborators, with groups, and is a really powerful way of understanding a specific topic, the specific research area. In addition to papers, we also have another search called citation statement search. This citation statement search, to me, is really quite different from everything else out there. This allows you to search effectively our entire database, but you're not just searching now on title or abstract, you're searching the citation statements itself. And so really it's like asking the literature a question and saying, what does the literature say about X? And X could be, Williamsburg rent rise. And so say you're writing an essay on this, this is where I live. If you search this, it will then match based on the citation statements, and you can quickly see what do different papers say about this. So here it's talking about rents on Bedford Avenue rising by 224% between 2003 and 2007. And another part where I am increasing by 158%. So again, it's a way to not just find relevant papers, but to almost see directly the answer that you might be looking for. And it's very powerful for looking at almost any topic. It doesn't just have to be a phrase. You can also look up reagent IDs or names. And so here's an antibody that I have used previously. It matches there, and you can generally see, okay, here's how different groups have used this antibody. And so if you're spending $400, $500 to purchase this antibody, some of these things are very critical, right? What is the dilution that I'm using? What is the blocking that they use? And so looking at that across different publications could be critical, and we've now made that very easy. You can search site on site if you want to see which papers are discussing site, how are they discussing site, what are they using this? You can really use it to see what does the literature say about anything. And so I often say you can search from Peppa Pig, which you can, to prostate cancer, and you get reliable research backed by peer review, evidence analyses, in this new, very powerful way to look at what does it say about this topic that I'm interested in. We've also brought this to our browser extension, and so this is an actual personal use case of mine. But here is a tweet from September 29th of 2021, making a pretty big claim. So it says, no significant difference in viral load between vaccinated and unvaccinated groups. This was a preprint. It didn't have any citations. It was brand new when I looked at this. There's one figure in there, and there's about 9 references. And so this scientist has 622,000 followers. This is a very big claim that can really have impact for how you live your life, how the world makes decisions. And so I looked at it. It looks like a decent paper, but again, there was no citations to it. And so how can Cite help with this? And so what we've enabled with our browser extension is to basically highlight a claim or a term anywhere you're reading online, whether that's a newspaper, whether that's Twitter. And what you can do with the browser extension is that right-click it and then search this against our data. So you can see, here's this claim, what does the literature say about that? Or here's this topic, what does the literature say about that? And so again, it'll show you various things, and we'll discuss, difference in viral load. Here's a 2021 paper. If you continue to scroll down, what you'll actually find is competing evidence to this. And so this, again, was very powerful for me because it was really an aha moment. And, me actually using Cite, not just to demo it, but to actually use it to help with better understanding. So here's a paper that looks at, vaccinated healthcare workers and unvaccinated healthcare workers, and using a different test, they do find a significant difference. And so this was another preprint that was not referenced. And so this is, again, a powerful way of kind of seeing what the literature says about any topic, and then quickly coming to understand, is this the full story? Is there more research out there? And then if you look here, you'll see that there's 4 citation statements, so you'll find even more supporting evidence to this. And so again, that information has always been out there, right? It's always been contained within citations or there. It's just very hard to navigate when you're only looking at titles and abstract. And so we want to move beyond that and really open this information to help with understanding, to help with discovery, and to help with evaluation as well. And so most of what I've shown has dealt with how do we look at published articles, how do we help with reading and things like this. We also have developed something that we call the reference check, and all these different things are available here. If you go to product, reference check, you can create dashboards. You can also create a custom dashboard by simply copying and pasting a list of digital object identifiers, or by syncing with reference managers if you're using Zotero and Mendeley. This is very powerful for groups that have a curated list that maybe is much better than what we could do publicly and want to see this information, or want to use some other search system like PubMed and incorporate that into Cite. And so that's a powerful and easy way that of creating these custom dashboards. And so continuing on, the reference check, as I was just discussing, does, as the name suggests, help you check your references. And so say you've spent months or years doing this research and you've written it up. You've just learned about Cite, and so you've already added a bunch of references. How can Cite help you, with this article or with this homework or with this dissertation that you're getting ready to submit or publish or turn in? So to demonstrate this, I'd like to show how it could have helped with this article. And so here is a report from 2020, published in Frontiers in Psychology. It doesn't have any citations. If we download this article as a PDF, and I'll emphasize this works on published articles, but it easily works on articles that are unpublished. So, a Word document that you're drafting, or a Google Doc as well. Come back to Cite. Go to reference check. You upload this PDF or docx if the computer doesn't freeze. Downloads. And so what we're doing now is taking a manuscript that we're working on, uploading it, basically giving the power to individual users. What we do, oh, that's not good. Basically giving the power, what we do, let's try it one more time. If not, I think I should have it saved. What we do millions of times with published articles, and giving that to researchers so that they can look at how their references have been checked, and to check that against our data. So let this one go. There we go. So from this PDF that we uploaded, we identified 41 references. So we've, again, applied this machine learning, identifying those references, matching that. We also flag if there's any editorial concern. In this case, there is metadata, so we match that and you can see that, but again, it doesn't have to be there and it will still work. It does need to look like a paper, so you can't just upload anything. From here, here's the different papers that have been used in this document. So these are the references from that PDF that we just uploaded. And what you can see is one of them has actually been retracted. So this paper in 2020 is citing a paper that was retracted in 2013. So a paper that's nearly been retracted a decade. And so maybe that's okay, because maybe they're discussing the retraction. And so if you want to see how this has been used, you can expand this reference statement and see exactly how that reference has been used. So it says, second, life satisfaction can be influenced by objective social context through a more unconscious path with little conscious attention or monitoring, Stoppel and Blanton. And so Diederik Stoppel had dozens of papers retracted due to fraud. And so these authors are citing a retracted study almost 10 years unknowingly. They are unaware that it's retracted, likely because they downloaded the PDF, they added this to the reference manager, and then later they used it. And so things change, and this will help you, stay up to date. And this is one thing we want to help the community, both authors, journals, and really kind of everyone avoid, right? So making sure you're not building your argument off of fraudulent work. And so that's pretty clear cut, and I would say black and white. What about an example like this? So here's another one that has a correction. You can check and see, does that correction make a difference? Is that something I should be aware of? What about a paper like this? So here's a reference used. It has 101 citations. 4 of them are supporting, 2 of them are contrasting. This doesn't mean that it's a bad study. You shouldn't use it because there's a contrasting citation. But if you've done all this work, it's pretty quick to check and see what have others said about the same study that I'm referencing. And so looking here, you can see this one says, this result contradicts the findings of Schwartz and Harfer, who found no relationship between regional level distribution and individuals' well-being in Germany. Another one says, contrary to previous findings, we found that inequality affected all parts. And so depending upon how you're using this reference or how your collaborator is using this reference, you've now found competing evidence. And so maybe you want to address this, maybe you also want to cite this, or maybe you no longer trust this reference that you're using. So again, this is a powerful way to kind of sanity check your references and make sure that the foundation of your own writing, your own research is on solid footing. It also helps you, quite simply to find related work and to find, other papers that you might have missed in your literature overview. And so that's a powerful way of looking at references. This is now being incorporated into submission systems. And so hopefully, it'll become a standard check that we offer to journals, very similar to a plagiarism type detection check. One thing that we have done, which maybe some journals don't love, is we've also built a Twitter bot, which we call Cite Reference Check. This highlights every time there's a paper citing a retracted paper. And you can see this happened 11 minutes ago, where there's a paper citing a retracted paper post-retraction. And 95% of the time, they're unaware of this. And so there's actually been bibliometric studies looking at this. And it's just a challenging problem to solve because it's, PDFs are what most of us work with, and they don't get this up-to-date information. And so we really want to help curb this problem so that, there's not these kind of poison pills polluting the literature, if you will. So one thing, that I like to kind of touch upon in this talk is that, we thought we were entirely clever. No one's thought of this before, but the idea behind Cite actually has been around for quite some time. And so here is a paper from Eugene Garfield in 1964, asking, can citation indexing be automated? This paper to me is quite amazing. Eugene Garfield created the Web of Science, the first science citation index. In this paper, he describes something called citation markers. And he says these markers would appear in the published citation index along with the usual citation data. And then he gives an example from a paragraph above. And he says a marker such as critique, Mr. X is wrong, or my personal favorite, calamity for mankind. He then continues and says the intelligent machine, so long before AI was kind of everywhere, the intelligent machine would examine a new document and generate a critical statement such as rather poor paper. And so this is effectively what we've built, right, is a way to look at citation markers, to show the citation context, to show where it comes from, and all this rich information. I'm saying we're fortunate to be building Cite when we are, because there was enough open access content to get started to really show the use case and then work with publishers. There was enough actual technical tools to where we could also apply this, right? It's a very technically challenging problem. And in 64, they just couldn't do this, right? The scale of content was much too large. Eugene Garfield, also didn't come up with this idea entirely himself. Lawyers have something very similar to this process called shepherdizing, and they've done this for over 100 years. And so lawyers need to be aware when they're citing law, is this still good law or has the law changed? And so there are systems from LexisNexis and things like this that allow lawyers to look at how law has been cited. Is it still good law or has it changed? And so we're effectively bringing that process to research where it's much larger. There's a lot more articles. And then, how researchers cite, there's no real instruction, right? And so it's technically challenging, but the process is quite similar. And also there's some differences with law. Law is either law or not, whereas research, there can be competing hypotheses simultaneously published. And so we're not trying to say this is a good paper or a bad paper, but we want to surface that information for individuals to make their own judgment. And so with that, I would love to take, questions. I want to leave enough time for feedback. Again, please reach out to the emails, and we can put that screen back up to set up trials. We're very happy to hear feedback and questions. We have a lot of material that we can help with universities sharing this. I think one thing that's worth emphasizing on all of this as well is that, CITE is not just for bibliometricians, not just for librarians or administrators. It is really used by students around the world. And so we have a lot of students using CITE, which, even at the undergraduate level, which was a bit surprising to me when we first created this. And so thank you very much for this. And again, happy to take any questions or feedback. You can put them in the Q&A or the chat, and you can ask them, as well, not in English, and we'll have some translation for me. And so thanks for that. And yeah, let's see if there's any questions. I'll stop sharing if you want to put up your slides as well.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Díky moc, tak my pevně věříme, že vás site zaujal. Je to poměrně unikátní nástroj, který nevznikl uměle tak, že by si někdo řekl, tohle by bylo šikovné, ale vyšlo to vlastně z potřeb, které měl sám někdo, kdo publikoval, takže tam ty základy v tom můžete vidět. A jak říkal Josh, je to nejenom nástroj na to, abyste si dohledali sami sebe, kdo vás cituje a podobně, ale je tam i spousta nástrojů, které vám pomáhají kontrolovat si citace, procházet to, pracovat s tím dál. Viděli jste i ty vizuální stránky a podobně. Ostatně i Joshovu psu se to líbilo. Pokud máte nějaké dotazy, jak již bylo zmíněno, pište prosím do chatu. Pokud budete mít zájem o institucionální předplatné, o triály, tak se prosím obraťte na nás, Albertina Ikome Praha, nebo na kolegy v Bratislavě, Albertina Ikome Bratislava. Zároveň vám pošleme záznam tohoto semináře, tak abyste se na něj mohli ještě podívat a případně se na něco zeptat. Já už vidím, že je tady první otázka. Josh, there's a first question.
I see one in the chat. Yeah, so I can also say this out loud. So thanks for the kind words. So the question is about coverage. So, does CITE work in different disciplines? Does it also go back, to older articles? So this is a really good question. And our aim is to analyze all research articles. And so while we've done, 30 million, and that's quite impressive, it's not everything. And so there's a couple things that I'll point upon. What do we do when we don't have access to full text? And so if you look at my article, here we've, extracted citation statements. Here we've extracted 3 different citation statements from it. When we don't have access to an article, what we do show is a traditional citation. And so we have all references and are very comprehensive at this point. And so that's one key thing, is that, it's not just that we are only working with open access or only working with, a subset of research. We're working with all articles. And then we have 1 billion citation statements and over 1 billion, of these traditional citations. And our aim is to work through these articles to get out the citation context. So you can see not just that this article cites it, but again, how it cites it. The question asked specifically about, age though. So how does CITE work with older articles? And so what I was doing in the background when I read this was actually searching for one of the oldest contrasting citation statements. And so if you search for finding and then narrow it down to contrasting, there's also actually one more thing I should show you, which I left off. You can see that there's a paper from 1897 that we've extracted, right? And so this one is saying my results are therefore not in accord with the views taken by Schriff, Philippou, and Volpin. And so there's, contrasting citation statement that's over 100 years old. And if you look at this full text, it's really quite remarkable. And so here is, a partnership that we have with Royal Society. We go to the PDF, and I'll show you, how, like, the PDF that we were able to extract this from. And to me, it's, it's remarkable that it's worked at all, because it's really, just a picture of a document that is extremely old. If this opens. So here is, this PDF that we processed, again, using really advanced machine learning to extract this information out of it. And so it does work back in time. Obviously, it's not going to work as well on an article like this as it will on a new article, but it does, go back and we really aim to have as robust coverage as possible. Another thing that also, is not covered is that our information is not just this startup doing something interesting on the side. We're really working with publishers to bring this to articles directly. And so you can see this information directly on the version of record at the Royal Society. It's also, and this is not even yet announced, live on all PNAS articles. And so if you come to an article like this, and you go to metrics and citations, you can see alt metrics, and then you can also see our information. And then you can see, in this case, this one's actually been retracted, which will also show. And so again, to be this next generation of citations, we want this information to be live on articles themselves, also on other tools. We make this easy to do with our badge. And so the badge can also be added to university repositories. It's live on various university repositories in Hong Kong and Turkey, and starting to be rolled out on more around the world. It's quite easy to add this information. It's just this little snippet of text. You can customize it as well. So you can show it, horizontally, you can show it vertically, you can choose to make it smaller, things like this. And then it's just this snippet of text. The other thing that I didn't show, but I think is very powerful, and so I'd like to kind of just bring that back while I have some time, is the ability to search, this topic. So let's go to chromosome disaggregation. Search this in citation statements. Again, you can look at this information in various different ways. But what you can also do is, so not just see, what is being said about this, but who is saying this information, which is taking a little bit of time. You can also create this executive summary once this loads. And what this executive summary does is basically creates this nice PDF report that will allow you to see this overview of this topic area that you're interested in. So here's chromosome disaggregation. Here's the different citation statements, what they're saying. Here's, who is writing the most. You can also see exactly what they're saying. Where are these citation statements coming from? You can filter and see more information there, what types of articles. And then if you create this executive summary, what you'll see is this powerful PDF report that allow you to kind of, help patrons, help yourself, help collaborators better understand the topic. And so here is chromosome disaggregation. Here's the search term. Here's when it was ran. We identify 17,000 plus expert analyses and opinions or citation statements. Here is the most cited paper, and you can click this and it will take you over to cite. Here's the most supported paper, and then here's the metrics. Here's what this research looks like over time. So a lot, there's some earlier work, but then it really started to gain steam around there. There's more supporting, contrasting, etc. Who's publishing in this area? So who has most publications in chromosome disaggregation? Who has the most supported work? So these are papers with at least 5 supporting citations. You can see that there's some overlap. There's also some new names in there. And so that's important. Where are they coming from? And then what is being said? And so here are, matches based on the most relevant, the most recent papers. So matching, some papers from 2022, the most supported, as well as the most contrasted. And so this is a very powerful way to create this report on almost any topic to understand it a bit better and then to go deeper, right? So what is, the most important work, who's working on this, et cetera. And we have a lot of librarians doing this to help with different students to say, hey, I'm interested in this topic. They can now use Cite very easily to put together a report that they can give. And then that student can understand it and learn more from that. And so that's one thing that I didn't cover, but I think is worth highlighting. So thank you for that question. I know I covered a lot more beyond that, but is a really good one. Okay, so another question. What about the language of documents? So again, a great question. So if we come back to Cite, we do work with non-English articles. If you come to this example report, what you can see here is, these are English. Most of them are in English. If you see this unclassified and filter by that, these will be in different languages. And so it works in a variety of different languages because references are generally in English, and the citation style is also, people's names. And so that, it works regardless. We do want to cover non-English articles. And we, with our partners, have focused on different publishers in different countries where we have, representation. And so it'd be great actually to work more closely with Albertina to expand this. And you can see this information, goes in a variety of different languages, in Greek, in Portuguese, in German, and things like this. And so we do include that, and this will continually improve as well. Right now, it doesn't work for, supporting or contrasting because we need to train out the deep learning model in these different languages, and that is a significant amount of work. But thank you so much for that question. Another one, is there any possibility to measure the weight of the citations by quartiles, Q1, Q2, Q3? So right now, we don't really do anything sophisticated around this. I do think there's possibilities to obviously do this. And so, if you write to us or ask, in the help bubble, specifically what you'd want to do with this, we can discuss this and potentially incorporate it. We do also have an API that will allow you to do more sophisticated things with the data and larger scale analyses. This is also open, can really help with bibliometrics research as well. And so that can start to look at, these different things, but we're not really looking at the weight of the citations by quartiles currently. Another question, in relation to year coverage, it means that once you do not have access to the full text, all citations are marked as mentioning. Is there any flag to distinguish that these mentioning citations are automated? And so this is a good question. And so again, when I talk about mentioning or not, so coming back here, mentioning are not all the same either. And mentioning, does come when we do have full text. And so here is, let's filter on mentioning. Mentioning will come from various different sections. And so a mentioning citation from the discussion section like this is very different from a mentioning citation introduction. And so we don't want to say that mentioning are all the same or that they're not valuable to look at, because they provide a lot of very important interpretation and understanding, criticism. And again, you can filter by where it came from and understand that as well. And so these are, it wouldn't be accurate to say mentioning are all the same. There's a lot of different reasons to cite the paper. We're highlighting some that are important to look at the veracity, but there's a lot more that we could do with this as well. That could be used in methods, it could be used in discussion, things like this. And so if I understand your question, that's, that would be in response to that. The ones where we don't have access to the full text, there's no way of, flagging this right now. We are, working with more and more publishers, signing more and more indexing agreements to improve that. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Anything else, please? Yeah, another one. So here is a question. I have a list of articles that are included in systematic review. Can I use Cite for checking the retraction status? Yes, by uploading the list with the references to Cite, or do I need to upload the actual articles? So what you can do with that, if you have a list of articles, it depends upon how you have that list, right? Do you have a list that it's formatted as a reference? You can do it in a couple different ways. So if you have a paper that has a bunch of references, you can upload that paper to reference check. You can also create this dashboard. And so if you have a list of DOIs, you can do that by uploading this list of DOIs here. And then again, you'll see, the retraction information as well. And so that's probably the easiest way is to look here. Another use case is if you are using Zotero, you can download our plugin. So we have a plugin for Zotero. If you go to product, it's free. It's easy to add. And what this shows you is our information directly in your reference manager, and it will include, citation information as well. Give this a second to load. And so, maybe you want to look at our information outside of Cite. You can do that with our browser extension. You can also do that with various reference managers here. And so here is, what this looks like within Zotero. From this, you can also import it as well. And so if you're using Mendeley or Zotero, this would probably be the easiest way to bring that information, where you would just log into your reference manager, accept this, and then choose which articles you want it to say. So, dashboard. And so it'll come up on don't know why this chat popped up. It'll come upon this, and you can select all of them to incorporate, or you can select a few different ones. And again, it'll show, which ones are supported or contrasted. And then also from the dashboards, once you've done that, coming back to site, once you've done that on a dashboard, you can also download this information as a CSV. And when you download that information as a CSV, it will include retraction information as well. And so that's very valuable. And one thing that we're actually doing around this, which should be done, in a week or so, is to make it so you can click of these and it will link directly to them. And so right now it's, it shows one, but which one? So that's one way of addressing it. Here's another question. Maybe it'll be nice to have the citation type without context for all the references where the full text. Yeah, so we do have that. And so, if you come here, and so there's ones without context, we don't allow you to filter on it, I guess, is maybe the question. But you can see it's generally towards the end. So all of these are citation types. And so you can see there's 305 publications, there's 572 citation statements from them. And so these ones are here, and we do, you can search them by the titles and whatnot, but we don't have context. We haven't put that there, but we could discuss adding that as well. And so thanks also for that question. Anything else?
There's a one from Dana just before the last one you answered.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Yeah. In which stage of analysis, number of articles is your site right now? Are there already all English articles? What if they're still not all citation already found? So we are, production ready. I would say we are very robust at this stage. We have, over 1 billion citations, where we have more in some cases than Scopus and Web of Science that have been around for decades. We're constantly adding new articles as they are published. And so our publishing indexing agreements with publishers goes through all their back content, and then they regularly deposit new content. And so really, this to me is the next generation of citation indices. It has amazing coverage across different disciplines. However, we're going to continually be improving the tool and working on it based on feedback, based on questions, and working around this. As we're aware of new sources that we might not know of, we're very happy to discuss with those publishers and those different sources to add this. And so, it's not in beta or anything. It's fully ready for use and has great coverage at this point. So hopefully that answered some of this. We are trying to work on non-English articles as well, and as I showed, we have a lot of those already. I'm sure there's some that we don't have, which is true of all citation indices, and we'll certainly try to work on improving that. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. If there's any questions, please do feel free to write to us. We, again, will share this recording with you, so you can share it internally, share it with your collaborators. We do offer free trials, and we'd love to work with you to bring this information to researchers, students, faculty at your university. Really appreciate that, and hopefully enhance what everyone's doing.
Děkujeme moc, a jak jsem říkal, pokud budete mít zájem o zkušební přístup pro vaši instituci, obraťte se na nás a my to už všechno se site zařídíme. Díky ještě jednou a hezký zbytek dne. Naschledanou.